Good evening, everybody. It's July the 25th. It's the Zoning Board of Appeals of Concord public hearing with two hearings, one subject tonight. With me here tonight are Ravi Fahia, Elizabeth Dwyer-Leonard, and Tom Swain. Elizabeth Hughes is here from the town, and Kim Johnson from the planning department is online. No consultants here, and they will most likely review the tape so that they're up to speed. But I don't think there was really any reason for them to be here, given what was going on tonight. So, welcome all. We'll start off, as I said, there's two items on the agenda. So that everybody knows, I will start off with opening up the 40B hearing tonight. We'll get a bit of an update from the applicant, where they are. Then we'll pause that, open up the variance hearing, deal with that, close that, or continue that, and then continue with our 40B, setting future dates, etc. At that point in time. And so with that, first item on the agenda, 7 o'clock, Thoreau Residences LLC for a comprehensive permit under MGL Chapter 40B, paragraphs 20 through 23 for a 216 unit multifamily development, which is a 13.08 acre portion of the real property known and numbered as 275 Forest Ridge Road. Before we go there, as well, before the applicant is going to give us an update, I just want everybody to update where we stand. We opened up originally on February 29th. We had a site visit, and we had a meeting that was pretty much a continuation, because we had working sessions in the meantime. The last one was about 2 weeks ago, that Thomas Swain and myself attended, together with Elizabeth Hughes. Cliff Bowman was there remotely, and Joe Pizzula, our 40B consultant, was present as well, and then a handful of the applicant. We got some updates there, which we were, I think, supportive of in general. So I think stuff is going in the right direction, but we gave the applicant some our thoughts, what we said, and hopefully a little bit of direction. So tonight, I think it's time for the applicant to update everybody where they stand, and hopefully even us for where we came then. After that, just so that everybody knows, the second item of this tonight is that the applicant needs a relief from the zoning bylaw for another piece of property to make the development of their property, of the 40B property, excuse me, much better, much improved. And I think from what is being shown tonight, you will all understand why and how they want to accomplish that. So with that, I give the floor to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. Appreciate it. Should I speak from here? Is that?
I think that's.
It works.
Give me 2 seconds. Go ahead, say something again.
Okay. My name is Jim Lambert. I am here, managing director for Wood Partners, here partnering with the applicant, and here to give an update on the project as you described. We have, since the last hearing, of course, as you mentioned, have been through a couple of working sessions. As you described, you've spent a lot of time internally with our architect, engineer, and development team working on various different approaches to the site plan. We heard comments from the public in the last hearing, and taking all those things into account, we've kind of reshuffled the deck and have taken another look here at the project. And we wanted to go through tonight. I don't know if we could put up the slides that we have, Elizabeth. Wanted to go through some of those changes here tonight for you. So here you see on the left side of the screen, this is a site plan that is showing a revised site, 2 buildings instead of the original 3. I'm just going to read off quickly some of the real benefits of what we've done here. I think primarily what we were trying to accomplish amongst some other items is really trying to shrink the footprint of the disturbed area of the site. We heard a lot of comments about preserving tree cover, open space, and I think we've really been able to accomplish that in a creative way. And so with that, some of the highlights of what we were able to accomplish with this revision is that we've been able to decrease the lot coverage from 72% all the way down to 41%, which we think is quite significant. We've decreased the building coverage from 14.4% to 13.3%. We've increased the undisturbed area by 1.6 acres, which we feel is quite substantial. We've increased the distance from the abutting neighbors from the road in 2 different places. In one select location from 156 feet to 184 feet, and one from 200 feet to 230 feet. So we have really pushed everything away from the neighborhood as much as possible. In addition to that, as you'll see, as we go through the site plan, the buildings are arranged actually in such a way that even though we've moved the distance to basically like the disturbed area of the parking, the buildings are further away from where they were previously. We've removed the westerly retaining walls in favor of naturalized slopes and tree retention. We've decreased the surface drainage to allow for more tree retention as well. And the trade-off to some of these changes was we've increased the height of the buildings from 3 to 5 stories, and increased the unit count from 216 to 237. And just to explain that, all the things that I just listed that we accomplished by squishing the developed area of the site had to go somewhere, right? So we took what was more of a horizontal type development, squished it together, and went slightly more vertical, albeit while pushing it back from the neighborhood at the same time. So, you know, we were really able to, I think, accomplish the goals that we had heard from that, you know, from the working sessions from the night of the public hearing. And then I'll add that, and we'll get into this obviously in more detail in the variance discussion, but the big move that we made was moving the driveway from off, hopefully in the proposed plan. Fair enough. In the proposed plan, we've shown the driveway, how about that, in a different location. Instead of coming off the traffic circle, it now comes through an existing parking lot at the road. So utilizing what's already a developed portion of the property, and that accomplishes several things. One, it obviously gets the driveway off the circle, and we've heard a lot of comments about traffic being over, sort of having too many roads coming off that traffic circle, and so on and so forth. We did that. What it also does is, of course, keeps a whole bunch of those trees in place that would have had to go away to make way for that driveway. And then it also got the driveway further away from the residents, which we think is hugely important. So those are really the big moves. We're working on the architectural details now. We'll be prepared in short order, depending on how things go, to come back and resubmit, you know, formally a plan that shows elevations and renderings of the buildings and what we're thinking from a more architectural standpoint. Excuse me. But from a site plan standpoint, you know, again, we really think we were successful in trying to take a lot of the comments, competing interests, and put them into a blender here and come out with something that we think is improved and really, you know, serves the neighborhood better. I have my engineer. Phil, you want to add anything to what I said, these changes, or?
No, I think you've covered it. Phil Cordero from Allen and Major Associates. I think he's covered the changes very well, but I'm here to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Members of the board, any comments, questions?
Not this time for me.
So how will the
driveway access be handled? Is there gonna be an easement with the adjoining parcel or?
Yeah, that's the reason for the variant. Oh, sorry, Jim Ward, Nutter McLennan, Fish lawyer for the development. It would be, when we get to the variance, there's a plan that you'll see that shows the easement area that goes through there.
We actually showed, now, if you don't mind flipping to the next, so this is the side-by-side comparison of the old plan on the left to the new plan on the right. From this angle, it may be not as dramatic to see the changes, the math speaks for itself in terms of what we saved.
Mm.
But I think what you can see, and maybe, I'm sorry, if you could flip to the next screen, this is what we're gonna talk about in the next, and this isn't a color plan, so it's a little bit more difficult to see, but that is a more detailed depiction of how that new drive aisle will move through in the existing Thoreau parking lot. I don't know if that's helpful at all or not, but
No, that is, and you know, having kind of been by there and looked at it, in addition to saving trees, is there some kind of some cut fill that's being avoided by not having to
Correct.
fill in that?
Yeah, that's, I'll talk about that in the variance.
yes.
part. And once the board's done, I'll just,
I
Yeah,
had
Elizabeth, go ahead.
just a general question. Could you go back to what we were looking at before? I was spending some time with the original plan this afternoon,
Okay.
and what I wondered is if the line of parking between the two buildings, if there's a way that that comes out and is pedestrian walkway, trail, nature space, just thinking of, sort of the experience of the residents, you've got car exhaust kind of there between.
Right,
So that's just, I'm not sure I'm putting it in at the right point, but that's definitely a big question I had as far as
Okay.
livability.
sure, I'm certainly happy to look at that. I think what we're trying to do is trying to reduce the parking ring outside as much as possible. We try to squeeze down.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate that. Lots of guardrails here for sure.
Right.
But just really thinking about those families that live in this building and, open windows in the summer, and if you've got car
Right.
exhaust coming in, that'd be
Understood.
something to consider.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Wait, yeah, go ahead. Mike.
I think it would be helpful at the next hearing. The data that you gave in your opening, if you could compare that against what it would have been, but,
That's a
you know,
good point.
and I appreciate that will vary depending on the decision on the roadway. But
Right, right,
those, just in a simple chart, I think would be very helpful.
sure.
So this was also presented, excuse me, to Tom and myself at the working session, and our comments were like, this is going in the right direction. This is,
Mhm.
In my point, a big improvement, and I think, in general, it is going in the right direction. That being said, there were still quite a few items like, okay, maybe we can tweak that, maybe, so we'll still be working on it.
Great.
But, and I was gonna open it up for public comment, but I unless somebody really has a good comment to make, I might just forego that, because it is a working session. We're going in the right direction. There is a lot of work to be done. We gave some feedback. And so therefore, if anybody has any major comments, and I'll take them, but otherwise I will wait for continuing this hearing, and I will pause it for further discussion later on tonight.
so, yeah, when you're done, I just want to.
Okay, and then I would like to open up the variance hearing for now, and then we'll come back after the variance hearing, after we've concluded that piece. We'll come back and set out, where we're gonna go from here, timelines, et cetera. So,
I told Jim I'm gonna be kind of like the guy, that's the over voice on a medicine commercial where everybody's like really happy and the guy's going, oh, you could die, right? So.
but they always speak really fast, right?
Yeah.
So you get 10
It's a
seconds.
speed listener. So as Jim pointed out, there are two changes. And as you know, in the comprehensive permit regulations, there's provisions for insubstantial changes and substantial changes. Admittedly, most of them occur after permits issued or somebody come back to tweak something. In this particular instance, the increased unit count, because it's less than 10%, would be insubstantial, and that can just go forward. Because the increase in the height of the buildings is greater than 10%, that could be deemed substantial. Now, because we're in the middle of the hearing process, not a big deal, because as you know, if you were gonna do it after a decision is you come back for a public hearing, or you just do it administratively at a public meeting. What we need to avoid, or from our perspective, is for us to kind of go down this path. Because if the board is amenable to hearing this change during the public process, fine, great, we'll keep banging away, doing what we can. Boards that are in more adversarial positions, and I don't see us like that, could insist on the substantial change being sent back to Mass Housing to amend, to issue a new PEL, which we can't do that. You know, so if the board has a real, now we can't approve those 2 stories, I think we probably need to know that sooner rather than later, so that we can do more redesign, so it'd go down to like, and we'd have to figure out how to make it all work like that. And I don't know what that would mean, but and full disclosure, I just don't wanna go down this 3 or 4 month path, and then all of a sudden we're at loggerheads, and then we're redesigning. It's just, it doesn't. It's not good for our timing. It's not good for your time. It's not good for your time or effort or anything else. I think through the working sessions and your comments and the public comments, this is where we are, and I think it's going in the right direction, but I just wanted to raise that and get the board's kind of sense.
Anybody want any comments on that?
Obviously, there's always gonna be a trade-off between the foot, the coverage and the height, and I think, we feel that it is moving in the right direction, right? Towards less coverage.
So right off the bat, my point of view has always been, you have a PEL, so we're gonna get 200 odd units here, right? No matter what, right? So, my point of view then has been, let's make it the best project possible, and, I think that will always work better in a friendlier environment than in an adversarial environment. So I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with an increase in units right off the bat. I mean, but it's like, obviously, if you increase the units, it's like, so a little bit like, what's in it for us, right? So I'm here and let's talk about it. I might, obviously I'm going to suggest to stick even some parking underneath the buildings, etc. There's going to be some back and forth here. So I'm totally focused, and I think this board is totally focused to make this the best project possible. I think we just went through the experience with the other 40B, and I think we all are pretty proud of that project in the end. So I want to get to that same result here if possible. Tom?
Just a question. Assuming we'll say what you've identified as the 2 more stories and increasing the number of units is not a substantial issue. Do you still have to go back to the state and get their okay? Okay.
If the zoning board of appeals is fine with it, you issue a permit with all that in it, then what Mass Housing's position is, they'll deal with it in final approval. And you know, but if the board's like, nope, we want you to go, then they would have to deal with it at the PEL stage, and we just would not do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think there's any problem. I think we got to a good place
Right,
with the
right,
other
right.
40B that was 4 and 6 stories. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that, yeah, and this, one of the reasons why this is going up, because it's sort of pushed away from the neighbors.
Yeah.
Building, so,
Yep.
you know, then it goes up, but I think it, as Tom asked you for the next hearing to have a comparison chart, but I think, and we talked about it in the working session, some good sections, some visuals to go with that. And how I think would also go a long way, not necessarily for us, but also for the neighbors, because I mean.
Yeah.
The neighbors will have something to say about that as well, obviously.
Yeah, if I may, yeah, I think you said what I was gonna, I mean, tonight, we're obviously just giving a very preliminary overview of the, you know, what we're thinking, the direction. When we come back and we formally submit and we're talking about it in more detail, we're gonna obviously talk a lot more about the height, how that height affects the neighbors, you know, showing more dimensions, things like that, and how we push the buildings back, what it really means in practicality. We'll have a lot more details, so I just don't want people to think that we're glossing over that. It's just a high level overview tonight, but we're gonna get into that certainly.
Great.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for bringing that up, because it's,
Mhm.
so we'll pause this and continue our discussion on this matter, a little bit later tonight. And we'll go on with our second hearing of the night, 705 Storrow Residences LLC for a common driveway and use variance pursuant to the zoning bylaws sections 1.3.8, 5.3.18, 11.7, section 4, table 1, principal use regulation to allow for a common driveway serving more than one lot and to allow for multi-unit dwelling use over such common driveway at 275 Forest Ridge Road. Mr. Ward, it's all.
I think, one of the property owner, I think one of the property owners of the tennis club is gonna, sort of run through, you know, just generally the overview, and then I'll kind of get into the more legal nitty gritty, in a minute.
Okay.
Yes. Are you guys able to hear me?
Perfect.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Malachi Burke. I am the managing member of the applicant and also a co-owner of the Thoreau Club, tennis club right next door to this project. So just to kind of give a high-level summary of what we're discussing tonight, we are seeking relief for and the allowance of a common driveway over one lot and the allowance of multifamily use of such driveway in order to be able to access this site through the proposed means that Jim mentioned earlier. So the entire property as it currently stands is owned by us, the applicant. And upon the approval of the 40B project, the property will be subdivided into 2 separate lots. If the variance is approved, an easement will be granted over this new driveway, this new proposed driveway. But this request does not have any impact on the 40B project or process other than where the driveway will be located. And so the reason for this new location is as a result of obviously the feedback from our first public hearing, as well as the subsequent working sessions we've had with the zoning board, which we feel have been very productive, as well as the numerous public comments we've received from neighbors and other members of the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jim Ward, who's going to discuss sort of the variance standards and more the legalese.
Thank
I
you.
always like it being called. So one thing is, if we could have done it under 40B, we would have. But
That was gonna
No, that was- I
gonna be
know.
my first question. Are you sure you need
believe
this?
me, I got that from my side. I can't, and I had so much like introspection of, can't we do it that way? But the fact is
Some
that.
council thinks you could do it that way.
The fact is that both parcels ultimately will be separate parcels. And that each parcel has to stand alone on its zoning. And that if the club had a use going over it that was not allowed in that zone, that's what triggers all this, plus the 2 driveway, the multiple use of the driveway. So I think that, maybe a more aggressive position would have gone the comprehensive permit route. And maybe you guys would have said, yeah, okay, you know, we don't want to touch that variance. But reality is that we have banks and investors, and they are usually represented by out-of-state lawyers, and they are usually really big firms, and they usually love to just fly spec things. And so you could see us going through this whole process and them saying, well, that's not right. There are these cases that say that's not right. And so I think we address it up front, and hopefully we come to a positive result, because I think as the chairman said, this has been very collaborative, and we heard what the neighbors said, and we doing our best to try to accommodate it, you know, and if it works, I think everybody will be happy. So, to the legalese. So under
Just one quick question,
Yeah.
is the applicant for the variance then the
the
club?
club.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we throw around the word applicant here. Unfortunately, there's 40B applicant. We're done talking to him right now.
Yeah.
And now it's the whole property applicant, which is the club. So Mass General Laws 48, Section 10 provides for variances. And the standard that we have to meet is that, you know, I apologize for kind of reading this stuff.
That's all
It's
right.
more for the record. It said, owing to circumstances related to the soil condition, shape, or topography of the land, structures, especially affecting such land or structures, but not generally affecting the zoning district in which it's located. A literal enforcement of the provisions of the zoning ordinance or bylaw would invoke substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. And that desirable relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, or without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent of the purpose of the zoning bylaw. So I know you have a memo from your town council, which I read, and I thought it was quite good, and I agree with it. I actually just read the bullet points from it. And I'll tell you that I've done a ton of variances, you know, and I got another hearing next Tuesday in another community. And generally speaking, the section that's always sort of focused on is the hardship, and here it says financial or otherwise, and 99.9% of the variance cases are the hardship financial. The otherwise is less uses. We're the otherwise. So you have to sort of look at it from the standpoint of.
And it says hardship, but it says substantial hardship, right? It's not like absolute hardship.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no.
That's also.
It's not a sink or swim.
Right.
And I guess substantial is a subjective term. I mean, substantial to me.
Sure,
might
but
not
it
be
doesn't say
substantial to
absolute.
you.
Right.
And I think in this instance, the substantial relates to broader planning concepts of the town and the neighbors' interests. So that's what we're responding to. So with respect to, go back a bullet point, and so it's the unique shape of the lot. The lot is kind of big, and it kind of comes down to like this little neck. You know, if that little neck wasn't there and we had like a longer amount of like frontage on some road, we could just put the driveway somewhere else, but we're stuck with that. And it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. So the shape and the topography of the lot over there is, and again, Phil is here to be able to explain in more detail. I'm giving you the lawyer's understanding of engineering. There's a sharp change in elevation, which would require more retaining walls on the original design. It would require reconfiguring. There's a drainage basin right there. It would require being reconfigured, which can be done, and it would still function the same, but it would have to be reconfigured, which is a little bit more site disturbance. the big one, I think, from everybody's perspective, is the reduction of the vegetative buffer. And so from the club's perspective, not that they don't like their neighbors, but I think that the more buffer that they have with their neighbors, probably the better from everybody's perspective. But, you know, if need be, the driveway has to go there, but we're hoping that that will stay there. And then finally, being in the other spot would be an increase of the overall site's impervious surface. So this is kind of like reusing existing paving, which is sort of a really good planning concept. And then it ends up with one means of access, and then any conflict of traffic would be internal. I think the last bit is like relief can be granted without substantial detriment to and basically consistent with the zoning bylaw. And I think that the zoning bylaw sort of hits on 3 points here, which is important. It will lessen congestion on the street in the sense that there wouldn't be 2 points, that congestion would be internalized if there is any congestion. It encourages housing of all income levels, which, you know, the housing is to be there anyway, but I think it encourages it in the sense that it's just, you know, it's perceived from the town and the butters and everything to be a better design, so that's good. And it conserves natural resources more than if we put the driveway in the original position. So I think overall, the hardships we fit into the otherwise instead of the financial with the for otherwise. And we'll answer any questions, but we hope that you vote favorably on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm looking over my
It's-
fellow board members, like,
The,
I've had it.
the thing I'm a little hung up on, so this is after number 2 is the and. So we've got to have all 3. It's not an or. So
Right,
it's an and
right.
test. The thing I found myself wondering is that if all 3 have to be present in the same strength, or if, you know, right? So I think that gives us a way to look at things where one might be stronger than the other. You know, but I can certainly see myself getting to each element is met enough that this makes sense. But I'd be curious what my fellow board members think.
I don't think you have to have the same strength. They all have to get over some minimum hurdle. But
Yeah.
if you go, once you get over that hurdle, whatever it is, one could be here, one could be there. So, but no, they don't
Agreed.
all have to.
Would you, and so then as we look at number 2, we're thinking about what's that threshold? Like,
Correct.
what's the,
Correct.
and is it a bright line? Is it,
No, I don't think it would be a bright line.
but just what that threshold would be?
I don't think most people know what a bright line is.
Like a yes or no, like it has to be one or the other, or is it sort of a sliding thing?
Right.
Sorry.
So,
There's quite a few people online
Okay.
and
Substantial.
they're not lawyers.
Yeah. It's, you know, substantial, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, that's right.
I think, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rafi.
go ahead.
I think I'd like to hear either from your, the attorney, some others are listening apparently, or from the, engineering group about the topography. That's, for me, is the challenge.
That won't be me.
Sure, so Phil Cordero from Allen and Major Associates, office out of Lakeville, Mass, civil engineers of record for the site planning. I think those that have been to the site, the topography is quite clear in that location. There's a very large kettle hole that exists where the road was originally planned for. I mean, to be able to give you, I want to be able to give you, you know, metric-based numbers. We have approximately 30 feet of grade change that exists from the top of that slope through that kettle hole. And
All right.
yeah, so thank you for this, Elizabeth. So what I'm speaking to on the image that's on the screen, the very far left darkened line is the limit of the Thoreau Club property as it exists today. And that's clearly where the slope is based on the dashed lines that are underneath it. So it's the steepest portion of that area that surrounds the kettle hole. The next darkened line as you move to the right, plan right, is what the proposed approval not required line would be. And the driveway under the previous plan was located strictly between those two lines, between the 50 feet of frontage that would be required to create that lot. So we would be navigating horizontally left to right, 20-ish feet of grade change. It's not impossible. That's why we as engineers get paid to do it, but we come out with a probably less than desirous product at the end of it. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. So the roadway that we provided, it's our name on these plans as well, certainly can navigate through there, but it really results in retaining walls along both sides of that roadway, which draw into question safety for those cars going through there, making sure they're properly crash barriers with guardrails and fall protection for pedestrians and the like. So if there's an opportunity to present a better solution, this variance does that. It accomplishes the same access to the potential 40B development, but it removes the topography from the equation in that the new location on the plan that's back on the screen within the dark and shaded area is actually over an area of the parking lot for the club today. So it's reutilization of area that's already been disturbed. It's already pavement. So there is no conversion from forested woodland to new paved surface. We will be repurposing over what's there now. There's no navigation of that large of a grade change. We will have some retaining walls along the portion of the driveway as you approach the entrance to the potential 40B, simply because we still need to navigate vertically that grade change, but we won't have those retaining walls at the lower portion of the site. Not altering the drainage, not altering that kettle hole, not altering the woodland areas. That's huge for us from an engineering perspective. And we think that's really where the betterment lies. The ancillary benefits, as these two gentlemen already pointed out, it improves the traffic flow, which is of engineering concern to us. It improves the separation to the neighbors, which is of concern to us for the project. But I'm speaking just on the engineering side of it. The ability to construct a road that's not on the side of a 20-foot grade change is, quite frankly, just easier and is better, more sound design.
If you stick with the original road design, how high is your pardon me, how high is your retaining wall going to be?
So we would have walls in 15 to 20 feet in excess.
And if you get to the road you're looking for, how much of the retaining wall will you have height wise?
So we would be in the 6 to 8 foot range, but it would
Okay.
start much further down the driveway. Essentially, the original position, if you envision the tunneled corridor, it's retaining walls both sides the whole way. Under the revised plan through the use variance, those retaining walls start hundreds of feet into the driveway.
And do both alternatives save the kettle pond area or no?
Yes,
Okay,
so the kettle pond would not be altered in any way. So there's no effect to any drainage, any native drainage, which again is huge for us from an engineering perspective. What we need to do for engineering for the roadway adjustment and also the future 40B potential would be handled in other ways.
and the last question I have right now, I won't hold you to an exact number.
Sure.
If you stick with the original driveway plan, approximately how many trees are you gonna have to get rid of versus the proposed alternative roadway plan? Do you know that? You may not know.
So I don't know it in terms of specific number of trees, but I know it in terms of acreage. It's 1.6 acres. So we're
Yeah.
saving 1.6 acres of forested woodland in moving that driveway. So whatever the number is in there, I don't know that part, sir.
I guess I would just suggest you may, for the subsequent hearing or something, you may want to think about having some estimate of those numbers.
So a question I have is, You
Did you
know,
want that
it's,
back up?
it's all one, no, it's okay, it's all one lot right now. You're drawing the lot line, so you make that neck, why can't you just draw the line over where the proposed driveway is?
Because it would make the club non-conforming with respect to FAR. So we would have to be in here getting a variance for probably their frontage and for their floor area, for their coverage. So trust me, we beat that to death. And
Yeah.
we had creative like lots going around the back. I mean,
Yeah, like a little thing on the
yeah,
back.
we looked at everything and it just came down to none of them worked in a straight face, realistic way. But yeah, no, that's a very good suggestion.
Excellent.
Just, it didn't work out. We wish it could have, but
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, Tom, I think there's the hole in the ground and there's, you know. This is the lot that is. What we're stuck with, right, because of the process that they went through, so I feel like that. That piece. I can get there
And the substantial.
on the topography, and the shape of the lot. So to me, you know, obviously this is substantial detriment. I think it's actually the opposite of that, right? It's a benefit,
No, I agree.
to grant the variance. So then that brings me to the hardship where. You know, I guess. It's fine to say it's the otherwise, but can you give a little more kind of, here's what the hardship is?
Yeah, you know what I can't help but wonder about is all those people who came and talked about how if it went the original way,
Mhm.
traffic and driving and people go too fast already. And I mean, I'm not sure that I'm framing this exactly correctly, but it seemed like that was gonna be a
Yeah.
big thing for people.
The funny thing is that I was thinking about the same thing, the neighbors, they were having the hardship.
Right, the hardship's on the
Yeah.
neighbors, not the.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've constructed that clause correctly, but to me, I mean, I really heard people were very concerned and
Yeah,
rightly so.
Yeah,
that it would,
and
you know.
rightly so, and then
Yeah.
I just, while we're at that point, also at that point in time, I do want to commend the applicant. Hearing the neighbors
Yeah,
and indeed going through this, trying to jump through this hoop. Just to come up with a better plan that works better for the neighbors, and I do want to commend you guys for that, so thank you so much.
yeah, so the points you're making, while valid points and raised by the abutters, which is the reason why we're trying to do this. As we testified in the original hearing, that original driveway meets all safety standards, whatever. But we heard the town, we heard the abutters, and that's why we went on this, but those traffic issues aren't related to the club. So the applicant here is the club. And the traffic issues you're talking about are sort of benefits as to why this is in furtherance of the zoning bylaw, but it's not a hardship to the club. You see that kind of distinction? So the hardship to the club, again, is on that hardship scale of other, and it goes from like, you know, not very much to like, oh my God, we can't bear this thing. And it's up to the board to decide where it is, but I think that, you know, from the club's perspective, just overall, the decrease in impervious surfaces, keeping trees between them and their neighbors, all things that would be a hardship if they're removed. It doesn't mean that they won't be removed if we don't get the variance, but it's a scale, and on each of these, the three tranches, if you will, that each one doesn't have to all be tens. You know, one could be a 1 and another 2 or a 3 and then a 9. I mean, so it just all adds up to saying, and we think overall, this is just a good thing, and we're gonna vote for it.
Do we have a sense of whether the residents of the multifamily are gonna have any special access to the club? Or any arrangement like that, or?
Yeah, it's something that's been in discussion, but we haven't come up with any kind of definitive plan. I mean, certainly, they always at a minimum have the ability to join the club, but we haven't talked about any special.
So, I guess when you're applying for the variance, do you consider the applicant, it's the club, but is it the club with the whole parcel, or do you think of the club as the future parcel?
Well. Right now, it doesn't really matter with respect to either the two properties using the same driveway. Or the use of it, because it's currently multifamily use isn't allowed in that zone. So
Right.
whether there's a lot line there or not, it's still not allowed. And then to have the dual driveway, that's still not allowed, so. It's that the club currently owns everything, so it just. They would be the applicant for the whole thing, but it, all of those. Problems with the bylaw exist. Regardless.
Yeah, I'm just trying, thinking in terms of hardship, if the hardship is to the club. Can we consider? You know, the ability to build the. Project or not, right, because eventually that's not gonna be part of the club.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that if what you're getting at is, suppose the club doesn't get, suppose the 40B doesn't get approved, what, we've just granted this kind of open-ended variance, which I think you can, variances by their very nature can be limited as to people, uses, things like that, so the decision can say this is only valid if the 40B project, goes forward or something like that, so that it wouldn't be some other potential use that came in there later.
Mhm.
And you can say only for multifamily, for this 40B project, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be specific to this
Yeah.
40B project.
Yeah.
And you could make it specific to, because we've seen a plan where they split the lots out. Somewhere I've seen a plan to that. You could make it applicable to lot.
Yeah, cause we're
What-
relying
a
on
lot.
we're
One,
relying on this
two, I
lot,
don't remember.
we're relying on this
Yeah.
lot shape to.
Right.
Yeah.
Make some of our findings here.
Do you have any estimate of, again, ballpark, don't wanna hold you quite to it, but. On the hardship, I don't have any problem really with the argument on hardship, because I look at the financial side of it. Not the difficulty of construction, et cetera. Do you have any estimate if you get the old road, the original road, you have to stick with that versus. The new one you're asking for tonight? Kind of what's the difference of cost?
Well, again, the cost for that road goes to the comprehensive permit, project. So there wouldn't be a financial hardship to the club. So that's why we have to fit under or otherwise. I think obviously all of this construction that will go on, the sort of minor reconfiguration of the parking lot, building and the driveway, that will all be borne by the 40B project. But that's not a financial hardship to the club.
I appreciate that, but, are you able to say under the 40B project? I assume that the road that we're talking about tonight. Will have less expense to someone
Oh, yeah,
than if we go with the original road.
yeah, oh, yeah.
And I'm just asking, do we have a ballpark of what that difference might be?
I'm sorry,
No, go ahead, please. I don't
No,
mind.
I was gonna suggest that we don't have an actual cost margin. We know it's obviously more expensive to build a road on the left versus the right, but I don't have the exact number
Okay.
or order of magnitude. It would be at least 2 to 1. Those rock walls would be quite expensive.
if we're done with questions, normal course of business here is now to open it up for the public for any questions. And I'm happy to entertain some questions from the public. So let's see whether there is, if you're online, please use the raise hand function. Otherwise, we're gonna start off here in the room. So please go ahead.
Mike Berry, 18 Sweet Birch Lane. I know the new plan and the proposed variance have additional parking off-site. Can you discuss and elaborate that, why it's necessary, how far it is from the residences, and why it occurred?
Say it again, additional parking.
Yeah, there's 2 additional parking lots noted on the variance plan.
Okay, and I can, if you can pull that up, that is because the road to the property is over the plan west double bay, where it currently is parking. That's gonna be the road to the 40B project, so that parking needs to be replaced. And it needs to be replaced for zoning purposes, because the club needs a certain amount of zoning.
Club purposes.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you see here, the.
So-
Can you,
Yep.
We would need another.
Bring it back to the board.
And it's probably more for the first question, but a 6-story building, we talking something 70 feet tall or more?
that's,
No,
that's,
that's a
those,
6 is a different project.
so, yeah. So let's focus on the variance here, and then, and potentially
So
can
that
do,
parking is just to replace what the club currently has, where the
Correct.
driveway is proposed.
yeah, correct. So, thank you for that. Anybody else in the room? Go ahead.
Yes, it's twofold.
I'm sorry, could I get your name and
Oh,
address?
yes, I am Vahan Nalbandi and I am at 20 Sweet Birch Lane.
Okay, thank you.
Grateful for my neighbor, because I am a resident there and thanks to the town. When I've had guests over, they said, there's a lot of traffic here. I said, tell me about it. I wake up every morning from it. I don't exercise at 5, 6, 7 a.m., but I wake up every morning. I haven't been paying attention to everything that's been going on. Sometimes, sadly, because of my disability, I'm not as focused as many that are really financially vested. And whether it's the town for tax dollars, and of course, we have the state who very much cares of putting people into housing. So what I wanted to share is, and really, I get triggered many times, and I don't know if there are other neighbors do from noise or traffic, but I would assume one would, even if they don't suffer a disability. And what I read from today's, the 2 sides, which is Black Birch and Sweet Birch, I did not know that there were, from just the row alone, about 800 cars. And then there possibly, with the study done, it could be another 950 cars. And I'm not even sure if that's with the summer outings being the fun events. So I don't know whenever these pickups were, like, of traffic flow. But I know one thing, before I even read that today, I'm trying to go down Forest Ridge. And I've been a driver. That's what my profession was before I got the opportunity to buy here honorably. And I'm very alert. I could not pull out to the left. I could not pull out to the right. Traffic was just horrendous. And I said, there's an accident going to happen. I don't know when to pull out, when not to pull out, but that's not even it. So what I wanted to ask is, everyone needs to make money. I understand. Everyone needs housing. I understand. Now what I've understood is 217 units, what I read, it was 237 that is going up to. And you made a nice suggestion, can you go underneath for parking, because it's done in the cities. And I would hope with, this is a gifted group, I don't know where they're from, but this, I could tell with their engineers and their sites, and they're probably across the country, I just don't know, they're not locals that just build a couple of units. Is there any way that to help everyone, I know instead of going 237, can they go down to 100 units and still make it profitable and get that traffic down? Because how are you gonna solve the traffic problem? I mean, how are you gonna, I live in the traffic and others are gonna live in that traffic. And so the town wants tax dollars, I'm sure. The state needs to have housing and where does it stop, really? Where does it stop? Because there's nothing saying they can't sell out the whole land, correct?
Well, no, there is. Thank you for your comment on that. The hearing we're at now is to relocation of the driveway. And we're trying to make sure that that can be done in the correct way. We know that there's gonna be, state already has approved 210-ish to 13 units. The state has approved.
Okay.
So that's gonna be built there. The state, we have pretty little say in that. So the applicant, I think for reasons we will hear eventually, would like to increase that number. They can't increase it by more than 10%. That's a given. But we'll discuss that. And then I think sometime in September, October, the date is not set. We'll just gonna revisit that and start talking about the new plan in depth as long as we get past this initial driveway relocation issue. We at our first hearing that we had in February 29, we had a long dissertation from the traffic engineer and with the numbers they are running, etc. And according to him, the roads can handle that. And we, as a town, have hired a peer review consultant who will be, once their plans are a bit further settled, will review everything that they have submitted, will review the traffic and also the civil engineering, etc., so that we indeed know that it's going to. But I don't disagree with you. I mean, I live in Concord as well, obviously, and I travel the roads here, whether it's by bike or by vehicle, but there is traffic, and Concord is not alone. So that, I think, is the name of the game. Okay, so hopefully.
One follow-up.
Okay, one follow-up. Okay.
Mike Berry, 18 Sweet Birch.
Mhm.
I'm also a member of the Sweet Birch community, and some of my neighbors are concerned about headlamps coming from the new driveway location, illuminating their buildings. Is there any attempt to convince us that that won't be a problem, either through screening or it's just the orientation of the lamps goes into grade as opposed to houses? I don't know.
I'm sure they can convince you. I don't think it's going to be tonight, but they're going to be convincing you. We'll make sure of that. Mr. Clayton online, Mr. Gary Clayton. I think everybody's asking him to unmute and then muting him again. Mr. Clayton?
Yes, can you hear me now?
We
Good,
can.
good.
Thank you.
I live at 31 Black Birch Lane, and I'm a butter to the proposed project area. And to the specific question that the board is reviewing this evening, that is the variance, whether the proposed realignment of the driveway meets the criteria that you need to consider before granting such a variance. A couple of points come to mind for me. One, this particular area of Concord characterized by these kettle hole and ridge topography is, well, not necessarily unique to this location within Concord. I think it's exceptional. And the fact that some of the other development, residential development that's taken place in this area has very consistently and deliberately avoided working in constructing through these various kettles. The developments have worked around them. And for a variety of reasons, as some of which have been mentioned by the board this evening, they provide a very helpful way to accommodate stormwater runoff, but it also helps preserve some of the vegetation in the area as well. And on that point about preserving the vegetation, I think that's an important factor in your deliberations, and I hope personally approval of this request for a variance, because the buffers that vegetative buffers that exist are important, both for us as abutters, for the club, as has been mentioned in terms of their activities, and I think we need to look at ways in which to maintain those for existing residents and future residents. And the only final point I'd mention about the vegetative buffers is, in this case, some of the land here between Black Birch and the proposed development site is subject to some form of a conservation restriction. I would hope that some of those same restrictions would be applied to the buffer that in this case would be preserved in and around the kettle hole area and along the ridge that parallels the proposed realigned driveway as well. So in other words, if we're going to talk about conserving the natural resources of the site, that preservation should be made in a permanent form legally, and not just in a limited basis for the action that you're considering tonight as well.
Great, thank you. That's a very good point. That is, I'm not, go ahead, Ms. Ward.
I don't think we have a philosophical problem, but the buffers on the comprehensive permit parcel and the kettle hole is kind of on the variance parcel. So, I mean, there'd be two different in the restriction. I don't, we'd be insane to put the restriction on before we build the project, because if, you know, something in the field gets changed and if it encroaches, then it's a disaster. But I don't think, I'm not saying this to say we wouldn't do it. I'm just saying that we have to be mindful. We have to keep splitting out the comprehensive permit but I mean, if you put in the variance, both we have to, Phil, while someone was talking, I asked Phil if we could screen easily for the headlight problem. He said, yeah, it's not a problem. And then, you know, work and do a restriction, you know, after the project's built on those preserved areas. But one would be the comp permit would have that, and then the variance would have its own, and so it's a little bit of.
Yeah, but I do, yeah, we should think about how we can get that organized, but because I do think, I mean, never say never, but it seems like unlikely that something will ever get built in that hole. So, right, so, but I think Mr. Plate made a very good point that it's like, well, there was a reason why nobody ever touched that hole, right? And obviously because most likely because it's the low point.
Right between the.
And because it's the low point and that's where the water goes. But you know, having some protection would be good, and whether that gets, you know, because you're not gonna do anything with an easement if you don't get 40B approved, right? At that point in time, you know, we should link some conservation restriction on that hole.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good one. Elizabeth.
So the conversation the board will have about the comprehensive permit will be that comprehensive permit and the the buffer as part of, that development. I do not think the board needs to talk about a conservation restriction on that kettle hole as part of the variance. Because it is well within your purview to have that conversation as part of the comprehensive permit.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's still the same
I agree.
applicant then at that
Yeah.
point in time,
Okay.
right? Yeah, so we'll keep that in mind. I think that's a.
Yeah, but we're not
that's-
against it. I just-
Yeah, no, and that's,
Thinking like a lawyer.
yeah, just wrong.
They're like looking at scans, like.
Yeah,
Cindy Howland.
yeah, Ms. Howland, you're next.
Hi, Cindy Helen, 2 Sweet Birch Lane in Concord. And I think it's an improvement to have that access that way. Rather, I think you're just waiting for, I was one of the people that said you're just waiting for an accident to happen if it comes through the rotary. People coming out of Forest Ridge drive too fast and they don't even stop. They won't stop to see someone coming out of that development. But I'm concerned, and I know I'm not supposed to say this now, but I am concerned about the traffic going in and out if you increase it to 237. Because that would average, the average American family has 2 cars. That would be 475 people coming and going. And that would be headlights right into the people at Forest Ridge. So I don't know what the answer is, but I thought that it, and then my other concern is because I was part of the Forest Ridge Road, whatever, I was part of it, the board, and what's going to happen to Forest Ridge Road? Is it going to become public? It's
No.
private now, but then if this happens, the throw club and this entity will have control over the road. Because they will have had so many people, because the sheer numbers of people I'm concerned.
Yeah, understood, when.
Because I think it should be a public road if this is access to 40B that you guys are providing money for. And then you're going to have access to public buses going up and down those roads for school system, because you're going to have families in there. And right now, my development is 40, 55 plus, there are no school buses. I think there's one school bus that comes up the road to dump kids to the throw club. And during the summer, when the throw club has their, I don't think they did it this summer, the traffic was unbearable almost for when the throw club held their tennis tournament. People from, was kind of cool, around the world came for their tennis tournament, but the traffic, and that wasn't even probably 200 people extra. I can't imagine an extra 400 to 500 cars.
Yeah,
I just
so
have
that,
to express
again,
my opinion.
as you already said, thank you for your comments. Yeah, as you already
Thank
said, I mean, this is out of the realm on the 40B. So please come back September, October. We'll get to that date later. Traffic engineer will be here, and he will have an updated traffic report to present, and we can grill him at that point in time. And then we'll have that peer reviewed by our traffic engineer, the town traffic engineer. So thank you. Mr. Dowley, you're next.
You're muted.
You're muted. Hang on.
There you go.
Yep, there you go. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jack Dolly. I live at 24 Black Birch Lane. I chair the board of trustees of the Forest Ridge Road Association. Forest Ridge Road Association is responsible for the oversight and governance of Forest Ridge Road, a private road servicing the Forest Ridge community. I'll keep my comments limited to the technical matter at hand. The variance as chair of the board, I would commend the board's working group for influencing an adjustment on where a private driveway out of a portion of the Thoreau Club land might land away from the cul-de-sac. We think that is a good move. The board of the association responsible for the road, however, does retain the concerns elicited in the various communications we've made relative to traffic and relative to the condition of the road, and will hold fire on those until the appropriate hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Dowling. I see no other public comment, so I'm gonna close the public comment section of this hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion. Any discussion? And I think where you go is, and I kept a little bit quiet during the questioning because I wasn't necessarily, I'm not a lawyer, but, you know, from my point of view, you know, and I've dealt with it enough that some of the arguments are understandable, you know, and I think they sort of meet the criteria in my mind. Some of them are not, but then, you know, other stuff, as we said, you know, are just like without substantial detriment to the public good. That's a criteria. It's like, well, it's not substantial detriment, it's an improvement to the public good, right? So I think, you know, that, and it shouldn't be balancing, but, you know, where it's like where the argument is not the strongest. Other parts of the whole variance story are very strong. So I'm, you know, I think I feel pretty good about this, and I think, you know, in my mind it does definitely pass the straight face test. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think I can easily articulate how the unique topography and lot shape and the lack of substantial detriment here are clear. You know, for me, it was a little harder to articulate the hardship, but again, we're in this sort of or otherwise area.
and substantial.
There's not a lot of, you know, again, right, there's not a lot of hard and fast rules here, but the overall mix of what we're looking at here, to me, I feel that there is a hardship to forcing the driveway to be in a location that makes no sense here. So I think I can get over the line there too.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Young
you can.
man?
Yes, you can.
So do you feel that if we were to say that substantial hardship of an otherwise sort is met, is there any like precedent that we'd established that you feel like wouldn't be good down the road? Is there anything we should be thinking about along those lines? That if we give this variance, would we have to give one?
Absolutely not.
So then I think that lets us sort of rely on the reasoning that we've come up with. I'm definitely comfortable, and I don't think there's any precedent issue.
I'll let Tom speak, but from the town planner's perspective.
Yeah.
The Board of Appeals in the town of Concord has not issued enough variances to set a precedent for anything. And I mean that in all, you know, seriousness.
Yeah.
You know, in the past 30 years, it may be 5. You know, there's a lot of communities that, you know, they issue 5 a year. And so, or more.
Some that do more.
So, you know, a precedent,
Boston.
you know, one application based on the characteristics of that property and this project. You know,
Good.
that's my perspective, but I'm not a lawyer. I just pretend to be one.
Yeah.
So it's unique enough.
See me both. Sure.
I would say, not, pardon me for interrupting, but sort of like there's on permits and can probably attest to this, there's like a spectrum of easiest is like a building permit, site plan approval, special permit, and you start getting more and more to like a building permit, not so much discretion, site plan approval, not so much discretion, special permit, discretion, but could be overturned because you're arbitrary and capricious variances. You're dead in the water. If it's like so discretionary on the part of the zoning board of appeals, that if you grant, if, for example, you know, you granted us this one and then somebody came in with one that was almost identical, you could say, yeah. No, and if they went to court, the court wouldn't say, well, you did it here. It's just not that way.
Great, okay, good.
Can I ask, only because I did get that little square card? Am I to understand those parking spots in back of my house and my neighbors? 20 Sweet Birch Lane. It wants to go from 9 feet to 8 feet. Is that what my understanding was? Because again, I woke up today with a slamming door in the back. And that was my comfort level today, because I think people were going to the tennis or to enjoy Thoreau. But I thought they were pretty comfortable as is, so I'm not sure why. Like it's so comfortable there now for people to park, get some exercise, to go to the Thoreau Club. That I'm scratching my head why that has to be all redesigned. And is it to better the project? Because I thought the state said where the project is, and again, if it gets reduced, even if it has to with the numbers. Or I like your suggestion going underneath, engineers can do that with parking. So I thought the area in back of me looked pretty good today. I don't know why it has to be all dug up and cost all put in, and nature has to be killed and all that behind me.
Elizabeth, you can.
So there's an existing parking lot there,
Yes,
and correct me if I'm wrong. The applicant is not proposing to dig up that parking lot and,
Oh,
you're
okay.
proposing to restripe that parking lot, correct?
Yeah, we have to,
Yeah.
the driveway goes over like two rows of parking. So we just have to move those spaces over
Right.
a little bit on the property, not increasing towards the boundaries or anything like that. And not the only, but the primary reason is that the Concord zoning bylaw says you have to have one space per something.
Right.
And when you do that one space per something, if we were to just put a driveway there and not replace those parking spaces, we wouldn't have the one per something.
So the parking lot that's existing behind your, they're restriping that parking lot. To have a couple of the larger spaces be compact spaces. And that is only so that the numbers of parking spaces for the Thoreau Club, that's required in the zoning bylaw. That number doesn't change, because the new location, the proposed location for the driveway is going through the first lower parking lot for the Thoreau Club on the left. So those spaces have to be relocated in a different location, which primarily is happening on the main Thoreau Club campus. The small lot behind you, they're gonna just restripe that. So that's not changing.
from 9 feet to 8 feet. That's how I
A
understood.
few of those parking spaces, yeah.
I thought all of them, because technically there's some that are just dead spaces. So I didn't know why, I know they need spots, but from what I saw, a lot of them wanted to go from 24 to 27 on the proposed spaces, some behind me, some. Okay, this is behind me, 9 instead of 8, behind to the side, 9 instead of 8, and then here, 9 instead of 8, but in the middle.
Those aren't
There's-
changing.
No, I know, there's a lot of parking there,
Yeah.
so there's really enough for 50 or like good 50 or 60, so I don't know why. Like, those are all empty spots.
No, but
So there-
it's even though they're not used, the law says that they need to have a certain amount of spaces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
even if they're not used, even the bylaw says you need 2 parking spaces per house, for instance, right? So, and a lot of people don't have two vehicles, but you still need to have two vehicles. So that's what those spaces are. They just complying with the law. And potentially at a tennis event, they might even get used, but you know,
Well, so that's gonna be used by the housing people.
No.
No, no, no.
Oh, no, I didn't know what you
No,
meant
no.
by, sorry, so yeah, I didn't know why, if they're gonna stay 9, I guess in the middle, there's still spots to put there if it's every 9.
So
It's not
the,
all used, correct? It's not all used.
so I'll be happy to explain the requirements for the zoning
I didn't know
bylaw
how many
offline.
total spots are gonna be there.
Yeah,
As is.
they're restriping the parking lot.
Yeah.
A standard space is 9 by 18. You can have a compact space, which is 8 by 18. By restriping the lot and including some compact spaces,
Uh-huh.
it gains them 3 parking spaces.
Oh, so the others are all gonna stay 9 by 18? Is
Yes.
that what I'm understanding?
Yes,
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it wasn't explained to me.
yes, no, I
And-
understand.
In between you and me, if I had a truck and I needed a spot, and there's no other spots, I don't know the difference between compact and I'm not being.
Most people
disrespectful.
don't. So-
If you're not gonna swear at someone, you know,
It's
and get
fine.
into a fight about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it's only those. I thought
Yes.
the whole parking lot was
No.
gonna be
No,
No,
8 feet.
no.
Maybe that was my misunderstanding.
You're good, you're good.
Thank you.
So we're
It's only 3
gonna,
spots.
we're gonna go back to the variance here. I think I don't want to vote tonight because we don't, I would like to have a decision that we can vote on. And so I would like to continue this meeting to August 8th.
Okay.
Right?
well, so the board can vote on whether, you know, they, you know, or indicate that they
I
would, you know,
I
wish
think.
to have a draft decision
Oh,
for
I-
approval.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just-
And then because we're gonna get there. I think the board indicated where it wants to go. I think we wanna vote on August 8th. And I do have a request from the applicant on this point. And then I think that gives them the hint. Is that, could you guys write the decision?
Sure. Do you have a form, Elizabeth? Since you've only done 5 and 30 years, you may not, but. If you have one,
We have a standard form,
okay,
and we can have, the first part of the decision is always the administrative stuff, you know, the application, the legal notices, the hearing dates. And so I can put that together.
But,
Monday.
right, and then if the meat, and then, and the meat of the decision, if that could come from you, and then obviously we have a August 8th hearing, that would be our regular zoning board of appeal meeting. We will continue you to 7:15 on that date.
Oh.
And-
I don't know about that, so.
I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's no other items on the agenda?
But obviously we would like to have that decision so that we can read it, you know, a few days in advance if possible.
And that's a virtual meeting?
And we're looking for a condition, right, that it's limited to
Yes.
the,
Conditions
this
upon the
40B.
approval.
40B project.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Adequate screening.
right,
Mhm.
And indeed, obviously, you know, we can add on August 8th if we don't see. So
Oh, you're so on top of it. Yes, 7:15.
it's 7:15, that's it. So if that's agreeable to you all, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this subject, on the variance request, and then we'll continue, and then after we close that, we'll pick up the 40B discussion. Hang on.
Sorry.
Okay, I move that we close the discussion on the variance for the Thoreau Residences LLC. For common driveway and use variance pursuant to zoning bylaws, section 1.3.8, 5.3.18, 11.7, section 4, table 1, principal use regulation. To allow for common driveways serving more than one lot and to allow for multi-dwelling use over such common driveway at 275 Forest Ridge Road.
And continue
And to continue
deliberation
that
August.
to August 8th at 7:15.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. Great, thank you. So now we're continuing with, potential discussion on, the 40B, but I'm not quite sure whether there is any discussion, on that at the moment.
I think the only discussion would be scheduling.
The only
Okay.
discussion and they will be scheduling. So we've been intermingling a little bit, so the 40B, August 8th is our general meeting, but otherwise just meetings on just the 40B project. We'd like to have them in this room as we have tonight, so, and it's its own separate meeting. Just to reiterate, August 8th is virtual only, so
Oh, is
happy
it?
to show up here,
Okay,
but
right there.
you can stay home if you want.
Coming here. No, I
So-
can come in every day. I live in Winchester, so.
So, yeah, but yeah, August 8th is virtual only. So, when, because we need to continue the public hearing to a time and date certain. So do we have anything?
No, so from the applicant, it's gonna be, what is your time to, revise the plans, to have plan sets in? Because we're talking, it's not just revised
Yeah.
plans, we're talking, revised stormwater drainage, civil plans, architectural plans,
Traffic?
traffic. Will be in contact to figure out, because that'll be an additional review from the peer review.
Right.
And so when working, from when you think you can have everything submitted, and then discussing the time frame to have all that sent to peer reviewers, have them review it, comment, have it go back to the applicant for them to review. And, there's usually back and forth on certain things.
Mhm.
So,
I actually think, they can present before the peer reviewer has reviewed, because the peer reviewer wants to hear what they have to say, wants to hear their presentation. We want to hear their presentation and have our input, as does the neighborhood. And then the peer reviewer, they can go home and talk to the peer reviewer, and then they can start bantering about it. So
So if I may, pending the outcome of the variance decision,
you writing it, so.
right, no, getting approved and then, not being appealed. We would, our thought right now is that in mid-September-ish, plus or minus, we'd be ready to resubmit a full, not a full application, full plan set. Based on, the changes that we talked about tonight in more detail. So that from there, I'm not sure. If we can get in front of the board prior to peer review, then we'd be ready anytime after that.
Yeah,
If not, then I think.
yeah, no,
you're talking about submission of material, let's say like the 16th of September.
Yes, plus or minus a few days. I don't know the exact
Yeah.
date, but that
Okay.
sounds about right.
So, there's the board could meet on September 26th
Mhm.
to just have a presentation.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Everyone say.
And that'll be here at 7:00.
that would be here at 7 o'clock, yes.
That live?
Mhm.
Sound.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
person.
That's interesting.
They're all live. but-
So that's great, that's great.
So.
September 26th, Thursday.
Excellent. If that's it, then I would like to entertain a motion to continue the hearing on Forest Ridge Road, the comprehensive permit to September 26th, 7 p.m. Hybrid meeting in this room. Anybody wants to move that?
So moved.
Second.
Second, everybody, all in favor, say aye.
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 Are we good on the 180 days still? When we still got.
That's good.
I think the time extension, the last time extension you granted was out to October.
Yeah, that's my record.
So,
I just don't want you to-
I'm
Big
going
running
to
day.
assume that you're gonna be granting
Yeah.
another one.
That's, I mean,
Um,
I'm not doing it to sneak up on you. I just, I
Right.
want to make sure you're
I
comfortable.
wouldn't let that happen anyways.
There's no sticking up.
And so let me,
Yeah, I mean, we can. We can address it next hearing, but if we run up this, we can just write to a letter saying,
yeah, no, at the 26th, we can have a time extension form and the
Okay.
board can, accept another time extension at that point.
okay,
Okay, meeting adjourned.